What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another pawn endgame video, and in this video I want to show you how to win with a protected passed pawn. So unlike the last one, it's a little bit trickier because we don't just have two passed pawns, but one of these guys, and in this example the B pawn, is blocked by this other enemy B pawn. So we just can't, like in the last video, mosey on this king over whenever we feel like it. Don't have to worry about anything because in this example we do have some threats. So the first thing I want to start out with is, of course, we need to get our king to the center of the board to help out. So we're going to go ahead and play G2, and now they're going to play a little nifty move, and that is B4. Now, if you guys are thinking, okay, so I seen a position like this, I can just go ahead and capture, and then they're going to start coming over. I'm going to come over, and yeah, I got doubled pawns, but I mean, I'm sure I can promote at least one of them. Well, that's probably not the best idea. So if you capture, let's just see what happens. Okay, well, there's one, but I got the other one, and okay. Yeah, so capturing on C4 probably wasn't the best idea, so I'm just going to delete that. And now we'll take a look at the proper technique, and that is, instead of capturing, just moving or advancing the C pawn to C4. So this does two things that are really useful. First of all, it makes sure that their pawn can never advance, kind of nullifies the threat. Another thing is that the C pawn is now taking away the B5 and D5 squares. Why is this important? Well, it's important because their king would ideally like to, their one chance is probably to come here, attack from behind, even though it looks like it's going to take a long time. And this pawn is going to make that harder. It's going to block the king, the enemy king, from penetrating into our territory. So, of course, they have to do something. So let's just say they play C6, maybe try to get around anyways. So now what we want to do with our king is we want to kind of block this. So we're just going to play F3. And now check this out. Our king is now blocking these squares. Our pawn is blocking these squares. So this enemy king has no way in ever. So mission one accomplished. We kind of neutralize all of their threats. So now it's time to start making some threats of our own. So their king has to go somewhere. They can't move their pawn, obviously. So let's just say they play B6. What we can do now is we can play E4, gaining more space. And let's say they play C5 because they see, and if I just move back here, they see that our king is eventually want to come and attack this pawn. So they are trying to push our king out, or pretty much do what we did to them, prevent us from coming into their camp. So that's the purpose behind king C5. However, what we can do now is a clever little maneuver, and that is E5. So with our king protecting these squares, our pawn being protected, and also our pawn attacking B5, they now have no choice but to kind of move away from our pawn. So now on their move, they're going to play something like C6, and now we can come into D4, and we are one step closer. So let's just say they play something like D6. Not a bad move in theory because it opposes our king. One square apart, it controls, let me do a new color here. Their enemy king is controlling these three squares, so it looks like our king is going to have a tough time making any progress into their camp. However, now what we can do is we can just play C5. So our king is protecting this pawn, and just like in the last video where our king is going to protect a pawn, gain more space slowly, we're essentially going to be using the exact same technique. So another thing that I want to point out real quick, just think it's worth mentioning, is in this example we saw that what happens if the king opposed. If the king, instead of coming to D6, decides to go to the B file or anywhere over here, if the king ever gets too far away from our C pawn, now that our king is close to it, then our king can just start marching up and escorting this pawn. So if you ever have an opportunity to do that, then of course do that. It's the easier method. However, their best move was probably D6, king D6 that is, and we played C5 check. So now they're going to play, of course, king C6, and what we can do is we can start marching over here, and all of this while we are going to maintain protection of this pawn while attacking at the same time their pawn. Very efficient and very cool technique that you guys definitely want to remember. So now they don't have a lot of great options. Maybe move their king back to c7. We can go ahead and capture. And let's just say they move their king back to c6. What we want to do now is just move our king out of the way so we can start marching this b pawn forward. And now let's say they play, I don't know, maybe c7, something like this. Well, at this point in time, let's just go ahead and play b4, get our other pawn into the game. Maybe they play c6, and we will play b5 check. So again, like I said, the concept is the exact same as the last video. In fact, this is pretty much the exact same position, just one file over, because in the last video it was A and B pawns, and now it's B and C pawns. But yeah, the technique is essentially the same. Let's just say they play b7. We can play c6, keeping with this little strategy right here. And if they try to get fancy and play b6, then all we have to do is play a waiting move. And again, our king is controlling a5 and c5, so they cannot penetrate. So now, of course, we are forcing their king back, and they will play something like c7, and now we can sneak into c5, gaining more space, continuing to force them back. And let's just say they play c8, b6, maybe d8, b7, c7, trying that maneuver again. And now let's go ahead and play d5. And I actually, the ending of this is kind of simple, but I do want to point out one thing, one area we could have gone wrong. If I was to play king b5 in this position and they were to play king b8, then even though this kind of looks like a natural move and it was kind of the same technique that we were doing before, where we move our king up, defending both of these pawns, looking to advance them that way, if you notice, this is actually a stalemate. So the pawn on b7 is protecting a8 and c8, and our king is protecting these 7th rank squares. So that's something you definitely do not want to do. So that's why I chose to go to d5. So, you know, just another little trap that you guys should watch out for. And now let's just say they play b8. We can advance our king, now that there are no stalemate threats, to d6. And let's just say they play a7, maybe king c7. And the ending is unavoidable. They are getting checkmated pretty quick. If you guys want to probably see the best way, it's a6. Of course, we want to turn into a queen. Might as well not show off and do anything silly. a5, and then this queen can come out to b3, limiting their king. And let's say they, you know, move back and boom, roasted. There you go. So that is the overall technique. Again, it's pretty similar as the last video where we had our 3-piece system with a king and 2 pawns. However, the one thing that was a little bit different was you have to make sure not to capture when you can't reach your pawns in time, or your king cannot get there to escort your pawn up, doubled pawn or not. And another thing is that we need to use our pawns to block out the enemy from entering or penetrating our camp. So once we neutralize their pawn, this king and pawn are going to work together to be a really forceful threat. So that's the overall technique. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and I will see you next video.